Thank you to the Music Venue Trust for inviting us to speak to you today, although, of course, this is absolutely terrifying for me being in this room well, if no other reason, for the fact that what's been keeping me awake at night and thinking about talking to you people is, quite honestly, I can't do what you do. I mean, that other bit, you know, the other side, where you just stand at the end of the bar, drinking pints of beer, watching bands, giving it the Caesar thumb. I mean, that I'm pretty good at, heroically good at. The other bits, not so good. To emphasise this, some of you all know this story, I'm sure a few of you do. My one attempt at promoting a gig, this lives with, it was back in 1989, it's that long ago, but it still lives with me to this day. I was friends with Lamacq at the Harlow Square, and we cooked up this idea, let's put a gig on. Loads of local bands, and we'll have a headliner at the end, like a well-known headliner at the end to bring people in. So we had a choice of headline bands. One of them had been all over the NME. They were, to be fair, quite a riotous band who were getting quite good press. The other one, and this was in July, the gig, their album had come out in May, quite quietly in May, but they were sort of building up. They got an okay review, but it was building up momentum. There was definitely something going to happen, and they were possibly the coolest of the two bands. But they were £100 more. A lot of money in them days. But so anyway, I say, well, let's go for the one that's all over the NME. That seems obvious, and they're the cheaper one. Which is how I ended up booking Birdland and turning down the Stone Roses. So I can't do what you do. I can't imagine all the problems as well, which obviously some of you face at the moment, and just thinking about them makes me want to rock backwards and forwards and sob quietly in a darkened corner of a room. So I can't do that. But I think I do understand a little bit about what you do and why you do it, and why the venues we're representing here today are important. And not just important to the music scene, but important culturally as well. They're part of our social landscape. And it's not just about, obviously, the bands who play, or even yourselves who put on the gigs and the events. It's about the people who actually go to these things and what it does to them, what opportunities it gives them. And I speak from experience here as someone who grew up in a tiny little Essex village. At the last census, the population of my village was 1,003. I knew nothing. I'd read some music papers, I knew sod all. I went to Harlow to study journalism at Harlow Tech. I knew no one in Harlow. And of course, I made some friends on my course. But actually, walking in through the doors of the square in Harlow, my life just opened up. I'm a hick from the sticks. I know nothing. But I walked into the square and I met all these amazing people who taught me about politics. They talked to me about books I'd never read, records I'd never listened to, thoughts about the world I'd never have thought of. It was an incredible home, really. And it just, I don't know, there was so much energy in that place that fanzines started. We started a couple of record labels. You know, we raised money for causes. We marched against apartheid. And the music there was just, in Harlow at the time, was astonishing. All driven by the fact that there was a venue encouraging new and local bands and booking bands who were on tour. But it was just brilliant. Now, I think we all know, certainly I believe this to be true, no venue, no bands form. If you've got nowhere to play, no scene. No scene, no regional identity. I think we all get that. This is one of the reasons why I applaud the Music Venue Trust, because it's not only about the work that they do with the venues, trying to keep venues open, encouraging new promoters to start. Their most important job, I believe, outside of that, is explaining to people why live music is important. It's getting people to understand what it is that you do. It's attempting to get to the people who have some power to try and show them all the ways in which grassroots venues are important. On many levels. Community. I'm one of these people who's of the opinion that variety is a really good thing, and that every town should have a variety of places where people can go. Every town should have somewhere independent of thought and spirit to provide an alternative where people can meet and make new friends and come away feeling engaged and inspired. And every community wants a place that it can be proud of, or an idea it can be proud of, somewhere which represents them. Venues are about community. Likewise, there's the cultural importance, because away from the mainstream, there's all this amazing music and art which needs a place to go. It might be new music, it might be niche music, but it deserves to be seen and heard. I think it's critical that we encourage people who go against the grain or experiment or provide an alternative, that we give them a space. And of course, if you're a new band as well, grassroots venues, we know how important you are to promoting new bands, new artists. Sometimes the record industry may forget, but I don't think we forget just what an important job it is that you do, giving bands a leg up. It couldn't work, could it, in big venues? I don't think. Imagine if the only way a new band could get a gig was as a support band at an Enormo Dome, some 5,000-seater capacity venue outside of town. That's not going to work. Besides which, I should say that some of the best tastemakers I have ever met have been promoters. But shall we just remind the music industry why they're important? Here's a few. I looked these up in my diary. These are all bands I saw before they were signed. Seymour at the Oval Cricketers, before they had the decency to change their name to Blur. Manic Street Preachers at the Bull and Gate in Kentish Town. Elastica at the Camden Falcon. Radiohead at the Islington Powerhouse, who looked like a queue at a bus stop at the time, I have to say. And then again at the Falcon, a small band called Coldplay, playing in front of, I counted them, 33 people, of which 29 were their friends from UCL. And you know what connects all those gigs, I'm sure you can guess. All those venues are now shut. All those opportunities are gone. All those places where people form relationships, maybe fall in love. All those places where bands form because someone's overheard some bloke in skinny jeans in the bogs talking about how much he likes the Smiths. Where all those genres were created and where all those music fans momentarily had their lives changed. All gone. It's not all doom and gloom, of course, because over the last year we've had a few little venues start up. There's also been the successes, you know about these, but just for anyone who doesn't. Club Aoife back in Cardiff obviously was under threat. That appears to be safe thanks to the local council and fellow supporters. The Welsh Government and now the Scottish Government are both talking about bringing in the agent of change principle to prevent developers just bulldozing their way through town centres. And London Mayor Sadiq Khan is trying to bring agent of change into next year's London plan. I even hold out some hope for my old stomping ground, the square in Harlow, which, as a lot of you know, shut at Christmas. It may yet get a reprieve. We may get an alternative. I hope so, because that's what the developers were promising. I looked this up, because this is in... it makes me angry, this. In its judgment on why the plans were approved to redevelop the site of the square, the Planning Inspectorate report said that no evidence is before me to suggest that alternative and available premises do not exist in the vicinity of the appeal site for the music venue to relocate to, or that its longevity would be threatened by such a move to a new premise. I therefore find it unlikely that the music venue would be permanently lost and no harm would occur. It will not surprise you to learn that currently no new premises have been found, no financially viable sites appear available. And the square itself still stands there, slowly beginning to crumble, 8 months on. A shell of our youth and our dreams and a warning for the future. So if anyone knows anyone in the Planning Inspectorate office, could you please tell them that, because I went to the last night of the Harlow Square, just before Christmas. God told me I shouldn't go, replacement bus service, went anyway, tube to Epping, minicab, I went because I thought it would be brilliant to say farewell to the old girl. It was one of the most miserable, depressing nights I have ever experienced. Of course it was great seeing some of my old friends. Of course it was brilliant seeing all the people who'd moved in long after I'd left. But knowing that place was going, here's the thing. On that final night, there was a teenage band playing, the first band on, teenagers, young teenagers, punk-influenced young teenagers, pretty good, local kids. And afterwards, after they finished playing, the dad of one of the members of the band came over and said, well, that's it then. He's never going to get to play in front of his mates in Harlow again. So, if anyone knows anyone in planning, or the planning inspectorate, could they please tell them how upset and absolutely furious I am? Not just because we've lost that great venue, but because there's still someone out there who doesn't understand. So again, I applaud the Trust for taking on this job of explaining what you do, and I applaud everyone in this room for doing what you do, sometimes against appalling odds. But socially, culturally, creatively, we need you. We need people who can do it. Because there are hundreds, thousands of bands out there, and thousands of music fans who've had their lives changed by coming to one of your venues. So let's never stop telling people how important you are, and let's never stop trying to get them to understand. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good day.